11th of October 2025, alarms rang in regions far from Ukraine's front lines. A distant fire, a drone crash, the smoke of a refinery ablaze. Reports trickled in from Bashkortostan that drones, described by local officials as aircraft type, struck a Bashneft refinery in Ufa, the regional capital, triggering a fire and alarm in a facility once considered well behind Russia's defensive envelope. The governor claimed one drone crashed, another was shot down, and that damage was contained. Meanwhile, satellite imagery and thermal anomaly data surfaced, showing smoke and heat over the refinery complex consistent with fire. Whether Kyiv was responsible or whether the strike achieved deep damage, the very possibility reshapes strategic thinking. A strike 1,400 kilometers away from the front lines is not just a raid. It's a statement about reach, capability, and the vulnerability of what was once deemed safe. To understand why the Ufa claim, however contested, sparks such fascination, we must retrace how the war has evolved. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, it counted on its massive land forces, air power, and the enormous depth of its territory as a buffer. Ukraine responded with fierce resistance, Western aid, modular defenses, and asymmetric tactics. Over time, the conflict turned inward. Missile strikes, drone waves, energy sabotage, logistics warfare. The front lines matter, but they no longer define danger. A drone, a missile, an insider sensor, relay these tools have lowered the barrier of geography. So when a fire erupts in Ufa, tens or hundreds of kilometers behind traditional theater boundaries, it challenges fundamental assumptions. Ufa is a hub in Russia's energy and refining network. Damaging it could impose constraints on fuel flows, refine product distribution, and pressure regional logistics. More than that, it is a symbolic blow, a reminder that no place may be wholly safe in this war's age of reach. Yet, caution is essential. The governor's claim is one piece. Satellite heat anomalies and smoke confirmations are aligned signals, but we lack consistent, independently verified post-strike damage assessments. We don't know how deep the damage is, whether refining operation units were severely disabled, or if the refinery remains mostly functional. Are critical pipelines down? Are storage tanks compromised? Without that, Ufa remains a credible possibility, rather than confirmed reality. It's prudent to frame the narrative as Ukrainian-linked drones reportedly struck Ufa, local officials say, and satellite evidence is consistent. That maintains clarity and preserves your credibility. Even with uncertainty, Ufa is part of a growing pattern. Over recent months, Ukraine has claimed successful strikes on oil and refining infrastructure deeper inside Russia. The Salavat region, Volgograd facilities, production nodes near Perm, and petrochemical plants serving pipelines. These operations suggest a deliberate campaign to weaken Russia's domestic energy base, not just its frontline war machine. In each case, the economic and strategic effects, even from partial disruption, add up. A refinery may lose throughput, get shifted offline temporarily, or require rerouting that costs efficiency and time. Over sustained operations, those losses become cumulative. The strategic logic behind Ufa-like operations flows from several principles.
Russia's largest, capable of refining over 350,000 barrels of oil per day. Officials confirmed that drones targeted the site and debris caused a fire. It was quickly contained and no casualties were reported. At the same time, in Ufa, Bashkortostan, nearly 1,400 kilometers from the Ukrainian border, long-range drones struck the Ufa refinery, operated by Bashneft. One drone crashed into the facility, while another was intercepted nearby. A fire was reported but brought under control. Again, no injuries have been confirmed. These attacks mark one of the deepest strikes yet inside Russian territory, signaling Ukraine's ability to reach far beyond the front lines. The strategic target is clear: Russia's energy lifeline. Refineries fund Moscow's war effort and power its economy. For now,
First, cost asymmetry. A drone strike might cost a few $1,000s or less. A refinery is a multi-million-dollar installation with vulnerability to shock. If even a small percentage of capacity is impaired, the multiplier effect is significant over time. Second, stretching defenses. Russia must now consider protecting infrastructure in its interior, not just at the front. That means more anti-air, radar, patrols, hardened pipelines, all at increased cost and complexity. Third, escalation, deterrence. A strike, in remember, UFA, or further signals to Moscow that Ukraine may soon target deeper assets unless pressure is tempered. It is both tactical and psychological warfare. From Moscow's point of view, such an attack is a major provocation. The Kremlin's early responses were a mix of denial, emphasis on interception, and warnings of retaliation. Officials declared that many drones were shot down, attempts repelled, damage contained, but acknowledged that drone activity occurred. That admission is telling. One cannot respond to nothing. The defensive challenge is immense. Russia must now extend its air defense perimeter, maintain surveilling drones deep in rear zones, and accept that refineries, pipelines, and industrial hubs cannot be left lightly defended. Each investment in interior defense reduces Russia's flexibility and strains its resource allocation.
Ukraine's defense forces have successfully attacked 4 Russian oil refineries. The combined capacity of these facilities exceeds 40 million tons of oil per year, which is nearly 15% of all Russian oil refining. The fact of the strikes is confirmed by videos recorded by local residents. These videos capture explosions and large-scale fires. Even oil transportation facilities on the premises are not left untouched.
Our special forces struck the Volgograd oil refinery, one of the most powerful in southern Russia. A large oil processing plant in Bashkortostan was also ablaze. That's almost 1,500 kilometers from the Ukrainian border. This is this alarming trend for Russians. Nina Kolomiets found out that it's no longer just about the fear of drones in the sky and explosions at industrial sites. In the country, gas station owners are now seriously talking about a crisis.
Thick black smoke billows from the fire. The flames could not be brought under control for 5 whole days. A month ago, drones incinerated 6 storage tanks at the Novoshakhtinsk oil refinery in the Rostov region. This is the facility that holds strategic importance for the enemy's military-industrial complex. And this drone traveled almost 2,000 kilometers deep into Russia and attacked an oil depot in the Komi Republic.
On the battlefield, the ripple effects could be real. If the Ufa refinery's throughput is degraded, fuel shipments to remote rear hubs and distribution networks are slowed or rerouted. That constrains internal movement, forces reliance on longer supply lines, and increases the logistical drag on Russian units near the front. Similarly, industrial repairs or replacement parts may face delays, spare components may not arrive in time. A war of attrition often hinges on these small but multiplied frictions. The political dimension is no less potent. For the Russian populace, accusations that safe zones in the interior are being threatened undermines confidence. The government's narrative of stability, invulnerability, and protection becomes harder to maintain. Some citizens may press for increased defense in their regions or question why local defense was weak. For Ukraine and its allies, UFA-style strikes serve as propaganda and deterrent. They visually and emotionally assert that Ukraine has grown from defensive survival to offensive reach. Seen in the broader winter context, the timing of UFA claims is hard to ignore. Russia has recently escalated strikes on Ukrainian energy infrastructure to deepen winter pressure. Fuel and power security become existential in cold months. If Ukraine is capable of striking deep fuel nodes in Russia, the symmetry of energy warfare comes into sharp relief. One side destroys electricity and grid in Ukraine, the other attacks refineries in Russia. It is the war of infrastructure. Of course, UFA is not singular. Other recent developments affirm Ukraine's long-reach aspirations. Missile or drone hits on factories in Bryansk, reported attacks on naval or shipyard facilities deep in Russian territory, cross-border logistics and rail hits. UFA sits within that mosaic as a bold claim, an extreme case. But whether the strike is fully true or partially exaggerated, it pressures Moscow to rethink assumptions about interior safety. For your audience, this is the narrative arc that grips. A drone appearing in a distant city, alarms flaring, refinery fire and smoke, regional authorities scrambling. Then the map zooms out to show how far Ukraine's strike arm may now extend. Tie that to frontline pressure, logistic throttling, and the broader narrative of a war where striking deep is no longer improbable. Offer viewers critical questions. Is UFA just a claim? If true, what will Russia do to defend its interior next? Will the energy war worsen? Are retirements, blackouts, civilian ripple effects inevitable? As you finish, remind your viewers, the fog of war means we must treat all claims with discernment. But UFA, real or alleged, forces us to update our mental map of danger. No region may be safe any longer. The battlefield is expanding, the war is evolving, And for Ukrainians, for Russians, and for the world, watching every new strike redraws the frontier of vulnerability. Stay tuned, stay informed, and always check verified sources. The story is far from over.